Welcome to our virtual poultry club. We've got some new folks and we've got some old folks that have been with us for a few years. I'm Chris DeCubelis and I'm work at the state 4-H office on campus at the University of Florida. And I'm joined today by Miss Prudence Caskey, who's one of our wonderful county 4-H agents up in Santa Rosa County. And she does a lot of poultry work too.
Sorry for that bright light in your face.
Uh, that's okay. Uh, I'm gonna have Miss Prudence when we get started. She's going someplace this week, and I want to have her talk about where she's going. But we always start with the pledges, and we meet every month. The second Tuesday of the month, except for summertime. But last month we had what was that Hurricane Milton we had to deal with, so I just figured everybody'd be getting ready for the hurricane, so we had to cancel. So we really have only had one meeting. We had what did we have our September meeting. And then we missed October, so I'm glad we're back for November. But welcome everybody, and I hope you all survive the hurricanes okay. So we do record these meetings, and Miss Prudence has a Google site where she store. I guess I should have told you to go ahead and start recording. You probably figured that out. But she has a Google site where she stores all these recordings, and so if you miss one, or if you really liked a topic and want to go back and couldn't remember quite what we said about something, you can go back and listen to the old recordings. And then she's got some other material there too. All right, so we always start with the pledges because this is a real 4-H club meeting. And so if you ever go to an in-person 4-H club meeting, oftentimes there's club officers, usually some older teenagers in the club, and they will always start the club meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance and the 4-H pledge. So let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. And I think Bimini said she would lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. So Bimini, would you go ahead and do that?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good job. Where are you from, Bimini? What county do you live in?
Indian River.
Indian River. Well, thank you for doing that for us. We've got a young lady, Laura, and she's been with me from the start when we started this club in 2000. Well, in 2000, I guess is when we started it, the COVID year. And we've had so much fun, we just kept it going. And Laura's been with us right from the start. And so, Laura, will you lead us in the 4-H pledge?
I pledge my head to clear thinking, my heart to greater loyalty, my hands for larger service, and my health for better living for my club, my community, my country, and my world.
Now, Laura's very involved in the poultry project. She shows extensively at Central Florida Fair and some other shows. And she's also involved in FFA, and she's also involved in my other virtual club, which is Work Ready Florida. And in fact, she's one of the ambassadors for that club. And she recently got to go to Panama City Beach for what, 3 or 4 days to represent 4-H at the Florida Farm Bureau meeting. So do you want to give us, I didn't ask her to prepare any thoughts about that, but you want to give us any highlights from that meeting with all those big shots at the Florida Farm Bureau meeting?
Yeah, on the last day, it was really funny because I didn't realize, because we had so many kids with us that we all sat at multiple tables, and usually we sat with like other people from like other places. And I didn't realize that the people I sat with were going out to present at that. And so I was really confused when one of them just disappeared. And then like 5 minutes later, he showed up on the stage and was talking about like farmers' mental health. And I did not realize that.
Oh, so you were sitting at one of the head tables then.
Yeah. Then the other time we sat next to the president of Young Farmers and Ranchers, and the president.
Oh,
That
that's
was
cool.
really fun.
And who you got there with you? I hear you got a buddy with you.
This is my Exchequer Sarama chick. Her name is Quinn.
When?
She's a pullet.
Well, that's good. How old is she? A few weeks old?
She was hatched on the 29th, so probably around 1.5 months.
Okay, fantastic. Well, thanks for sharing that. Um, Marissa, I see you're on. I don't know what link you're on. I was reading the chat. Miss Prudence helps him with this club too, and she's going somewhere later in the week. Tell us, Prudence, where are you getting ready to go?
I am going to Louisville for the National Poultry and Egg Conference, and I'm very excited because I've never been. And so we leave this time next week. I should be in Louisville, Kentucky. So
Good. And
very
so
exciting.
we have a team from Florida that will be competing. The Marion County team will be competing in poultry judging, and the Escambia County team will be competing in Avian Bowl, which is a quiz bowl contest. And so, if that's something that you would like to work toward when you get to be an older, a teenager, we send our winning uh, poultry judging and Avian Bowl teams to Louisville for national competition. Last week, I will brag, I know this is a poultry club, but the Florida 4-H dairy judging team went to Louisville, Kentucky for the dairy judging contest, and they won first place in the national dairy judging contest. So, very proud of those kids. I don't think we have any of them in this club, but it's always nice when Florida wins the national contest. And I'm hoping they'll do good in poultry next week. So today, per your request, if you remember at the first meeting, I kind of went over with you all some things that you would like to learn. Now, one of the things that came up was how to hatch eggs, how to incubate eggs, and so that's our topic today. And I thought, well, that's a good topic to kind of be towards the beginning of the 4-H year because that gives you some time if you wanted to set some eggs and start some for maybe later fairs that are later on, maybe in late spring or over the summer, you might be able to show or what have you. Or if you just wanted to raise some chicks to sell, or if you wanted to raise some chicks to replenish, if you're getting some older hens in your laying flock, sometimes it's good to get some young blood in your flock. And it's good to know anyway how to safely handle fertile eggs and how to handle them so you don't shock the embryo and that sort of thing to keep, if you want to.
Dr. Chris, you froze. I don't know if anybody else can hear me, but
I can hear you. I just can't hear him.
okay, yeah, he froze. So what we may want to do is if we can turn our cameras off, that usually helps with bandwidth. And that may bring him back. So if you can turn your cameras off, that may be able to help him uh, come back to us. It looks like he has been booted. So I will take over while he signs back on. What he was saying is hatching eggs is a great way to replenish your flock. And especially, I know several of you have a particular breed that you love. I know Tracy is big into Old English game bantams like myself. And so it's a good way to keep your flock going. So if you have a hen or a rooster that is one that you really, really like, then you can breed that particular line. And I've done that many times with our breeds that we have at our house. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about how to go about incubating the eggs and how to go about what he was first talking about is how you handle hatching eggs. So does anybody want to put in the chat what some good ways are, the things you absolutely have to do when you handle your hatching eggs? Y'all can throw it in the chat if you would like. Does anybody know what a good way to handle your hatching eggs would be? Tracy, do you have any ideas? Or Laura?
Make sure
What?
make sure to be gentle with them so you don't shock the
What you said?
so you don't shock
Okay.
against.
My name is Dominic.
Right. You always want to handle your eggs, even if they're not hatching eggs. You want to handle your eggs with care. Tracy, what about you? Do you have any other tips? I don't see anybody putting anything in the chat, is why I called on you.
No, I don't have chips right now.
Okay.
No, we're making a chicken.
Sorry about my brother.
You're
We're
fine.
making chicken.
I'm gonna mute you. Okay, so Christopher says it says he's Dr. Chris is now the host, so he may be back with us. We were just talking about keeping our eggs safe and making sure they don't get any micro cracks or anything in them, Dr. Chris, while
Oh,
we
okay.
get ready for hatching them.
Yeah.
But that was as far as we got. Keep them warm and be gentle. They've got in the chat. I had asked what are some tips they might have for
Oh, okay.
handling hatching eggs.
Well, I know Tracy and a lot of the other kids on here have hatched. Tracy does it quite often, right, Tracy? I mean, you
Yes,
hatch a lot of chicks.
he doesn't have any going right now, though. I think his brother was saying they were building a coop, maybe.
Yeah, I don't know why my internet just went out. I don't know
Well,
what that was
I
about.
have asked everyone to take their videos down so that we could save some bandwidth, and that might help you out.
Maybe, I don't know. Can
We'll
everybody
try
see?
it.
Well, the first thing I was going to do, I'm sorry about that, everybody. My internet went out, and then my I couldn't get back on. It wouldn't let me. I couldn't reconnect. It kept giving me issues, so I apologize for that. But I'm glad I'm back, and I'm glad Miss Prudence is there. That's why we have two of us in case we can always. And sometimes she'll present too, and but we'd always like to have a backup in case something haywire goes on. But sorry about that. So I had asked on the in emails leading up to this meeting if you all wanted to do a little lab, and I always liked hands-on stuff when I was coming up in school. And so, how many of you? I'm gonna stop sharing so I can see you. How many of you all have an egg there? Did you all see this in the email where I said if you hit an egg in a plate and if you want to wear gloves, you can? Is this something that you all would like to do, where we can break open an egg that way you can at your house, and then we can look at the parts of an egg? I'll go over the parts of an egg in real time with you. Okay, so with your parents' permission, and I know a lot of you have your parents kind of close by, but I didn't want you to sneak off in your bedroom with an egg and make a mess, and then your mom get mad at you and me. So that's why I said, please get your parents' permission. So if you've got your parents' permission and you got an egg, and it can be a paper plate or a regular plate, a bowl would work, but probably would be a little harder to see. But a plate would be good because it could, you can get down and look at the different parts. So really, all you need to do is, and if you got gloves, you can put your gloves on. If you don't have gloves, we'll give you a chance at the end to run and wash your hands. But just take your egg and you can just crack it on the edge of your desk or on the edge of the table where you're at or on the edge of the plate and gently break open. Have you all done this now? Have you all ever fried an egg or cooked an egg? And I hope that's a skill that you've had to utilize at least once in your life. If you got chickens, I'm sure you all eat a lot of eggs. But just go ahead and break your egg gently on the plate, and then we're going to look at the parts. And when everybody give me a thumbs up, you know how you do the little reactions here when you got your egg broken out on the plate. Because I'm going to share a slide with the parts of an egg. All right. I see we got one, got a couple. And if you make a big mess, I apologize. Hopefully it should be pretty straightforward to break an egg on a plate. A couple more of you got your eggs broke out. Okay. And if your mom's there and wants to help, that's fine too, or dad or whoever. All right. So I'm thinking everybody's pretty much, I can't see a lot of you, but if let me know if you don't have your egg on your plate yet, because I'm getting ready to share the parts. All right. Not seeing anybody. So We'll share. Hopefully you can see this. All right, so let me go over the parts of an egg, and I want you to look and see if you can see this stuff on your egg. So here's kind of a diagram, like a graphic of an egg. So you've got the shell, which you've removed the egg from. Well, maybe let me show you this first. If you look inside the shell, on the big end of the shell, like the fatter end of the shell, you should be able to see the inside view of the air cell. And if I go back to this slide, that would be this part of the egg. So can you all see that? Give me a thumbs up if anybody can see from the fat side of the shell, the air cell. It's like a little membrane. And that would be this area here. And that's where airflow is going to come into the egg so that the little growing chick can get oxygen. And as chicks, eggs, how do I want to word this? Very fresh eggs, and you'll learn this in poultry judging. Very fresh eggs have very tiny air shells. And as eggs age, either on camera.
No, Dad.
What's that?
Sorry about that. That was
Oh.
my brother. Can
No,
you
that was
zoom?
Tracy.
Can you zoom in a little bit?
Yeah.
Like this?
Yeah.
Yeah. So very fresh eggs have very tiny air cells. And I'm sure a lot of you have very fresh eggs, so it might be kind of hard to see the air cell. But as eggs sit on the counter, as they sit in the refrigerator, that air cell gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Even as they sit in an incubator, the air cell gets quite large by the time that chick's getting ready to hatch. And so here's the air cell. So that's the first thing I want you to take note of is the shell, of course, and the air cell. And then inside the shell, there's something called a shell membrane. And that might be hard to see. It might be easier to see if you've got a brown egg or a green or a blue egg. White egg, it might be kind of hard to see. Tracy, I see you got your hand up. Did you have a question? So can you see the shell membrane, and the air cell? That's what I wanted you to look at on the shell. And what element, what is the shell mostly made of? And it happens to be a mineral that our bodies need. In fact, all mammals need.
Calcium.
Calcium, that's right. Yeah. And so it's very important that we supplement hens with calcium in their layer ration because, as you can imagine, after laying the first 100 eggs and then the second 100, some of these heavy producing hens might lay 250 or 300 eggs a year. And so that might very much deplete their body of calcium by the time they get through their lay cycle. So it's very important in a layering ration. And we'll talk about this when we talk about nutrition at a future meeting. But I'll go ahead and preview it now. You've got to make sure you supplement a layer, all chickens really, but especially a layer with good calcium supplementation. And if you look at your bag of layer feed, like we'll do when we get to the nutrition part, we'll see how they supplement that. But that's something, you can give oyster shell, you can take old eggshell, bake it and crumble it up and use that. But there's all sorts of ways you can supplement calcium into a layer diet. So it's very important that you do. All right, so now let's go back and look at the egg on the plate. So you've looked at the shell. So, and I'm going to jump back and forth between these two photos here. So let me go back to this one. You should kind of see three things that jump out at you with the egg. You should see the yolk, and then around the yolk, and if you've got a very fresh egg, which I'm sure a lot of you do, you're going to see the egg white is going to look like two parts. And we're going to get very technical now. I'm going to teach you the scientific name of this. This is called the yolk, of course, but then we have the albumin, which is the egg white, and there's a thick albumin and a thin albumin. The thick albumin is the egg white that immediately surrounds the yolk of the egg. So the yolk is the big yellow or orange thing. And then the thick albumin is the egg white right around there. And it's called thick. If you have a fresh egg, you'll know why it's called thick, because you can look at it from the side and it stands up kind of by itself. And there should be on a fresh egg a very clear distinction between the thick albumin and the thin albumin, or you can also say between the thick egg white and the thin egg white. And oh, we got some pictures Tracy's putting in chat. On this one, you can kind of see the thick albumin here and the thin albumin here. This is the thick albumin, this is the thin albumin. Okay, so can everybody see that? Can anybody not see the yolk, the thick albumin, and the thin albumin? Everybody sees that? All right. The next thing I want to direct your attention to is the chalaza. And that is this rope-like structure that kind of holds the yolk in place. And you can see it kind of looks like a big wad of white stuff here. Sometimes it looks like a string. Sometimes it looks like almost like a DNA strand. Can everybody see that? Yeah. So that holds the yolk in place. It keeps the yolk suspended kind of in the middle of the egg. So the yolk doesn't go float down to the bottom and stick to the shell. So everybody can see the chalaza. So far in review, we've got the shell membrane, the air cell. Then in the egg itself, we've got the yolk, the thick albumin, the thin albumin, and the chalaza.
Jaden has their hand up.
Oh, go ahead. You got a question? Yeah, go ahead.
So I don't really have a fresh egg. We just grabbed one from the fridge because as our chickens right now, they're maybe 4 weeks old at the most.
Oh, okay.
I can't really tell the distinction on like the thin and stuff, but that's really like the hardest thing for me to see because it just looks like one big old thing and then the yolk.
Yeah. So an egg from the store is going to have some age to it. And the longer an egg sits, and you got to remember that egg was laid on a farm somewhere, and it might have been on the farm a day or two, and then it went to a facility and was packaged, and then it went to another distributor, and then somehow it wound up at the grocery store. And so that egg's traveled some miles. And it's probably been around about 20 days or more. And so that would we in if we broke that, if we were doing broken out eggs at a poultry judging contest, the egg you're working with, we would call that a grade B, just based on the thickness of the there's almost no distinction. The older an egg gets, there's hardly any distinction. It's very hard to tell the thick and thin albumin apart because they both get so thin, they just meld into each other. And that's why a fresh egg, those of you with chickens will know this. If you fry a fresh egg and you crack an egg and put it into a frying pan, a fresh egg will stay right in place. An older egg does what? You crack an old egg and put it in a frying pan, it might spread out and take out the whole frying pan. Just keep spreading. Now, is that egg safe to eat? Yeah. It's just not as fresh. And so that's how you can tell the freshness of an egg. One way is by the air cell size, and another way is by when you crack it open like that, if it stays pretty much together, that's a very fresh egg. We would call that a double A in poultry judging. An older egg is going to spread out a little more. We'd call that an A. A really older egg is going to spread way out, and that's going to be a B grade.
Jaden, do you think you could share your camera and show us your egg, how flat it is?
Yeah, I'll stop sharing, and maybe we can see your egg. Because maybe folks with chickens probably have fresh eggs. Oh, Jaden, you got a question? Oh, is that? Yeah, Jaden.
Just give me 1 second.
Okay. And while Jaden's doing that, does anybody else have any questions before we move on? Because I want to talk about some more specific stuff on the yolk. All right, so here's Jaden, I think. And
it might be difficult to see. If I can get
be a little fuzzy.
So it's a little harder to see with my iPad. That's what I'm using. But like where the yolk is, it's very difficult to tell. It's
yeah.
there.
You'd have to get almost down at egg level with your eyes to see any kind of little distinction. Can you see any distinction at all between a thick and thin albumin? It should be just like a clear line of egg.
No, it was just like it was looks like normal. It didn't look
Okay.
like any lines there.
All right. Well, I'm gonna go back to sharing my screen then. So in review, we got the shell, we got the shell membrane, we've got the air cell, we've got the thick and thin albumin, the chalaza. So now I want to focus on the yolk. And so if you look at the yolk is encapsulated in a membrane called the vitelline membrane. There's like a clear, you can see through it. The yolk is yellow, and the pigmentation in the yolk is called xanthophyll pigmentation. And it's the same pigmentation if you've got a breed of chicken that has yellow feet and legs and yellowish tinge to its skin and a yellow beak. That's also xanthophyll pigmentation. And that's why in poultry judging, again, a lot of this, we're talking about eggs and hatching eggs tonight, but a lot of this goes back and forth between all things poultry. So in poultry judging, and you'll learn this if you get on a poultry judging team, you can tell which chickens laid the most eggs by how bleached out her feet and legs and beak and skin is. Because that pigmentation's got to come from somewhere, so she draws it out of her own body and puts it in that yolk. And so if a chicken that's laid a bunch of eggs is going to have almost white feet and almost white beak, and her skin's going to look almost white. Now, some breeds just have white skin and white beaks, and some have black beaks and
Doc,
black skin.
Dr.
Oh
Chris,
yeah,
we have
yeah.
a question. Ariana said eggs from the store have a yellow tinged whites. Do they feed their chicken food coloring?
No, they don't feed them food coloring. That's just going to be a little bit of age to that egg. It's just going to be an issue with those eggs aren't going to be quite as fresh. And then they're on a high protein ration too. And so that might have a little bit to do with it too. But mostly that little, I know what you're talking about, little tins, they're not feeding them marigolds or anything. You can feed some stuff to chickens. People will feed sometimes their chickens red pepper flakes or marigolds, the flour, to try to get that yolk almost orange, real dark orange. And they're not doing that on a commercial layer operation. They're not doing that, no. But you know, the yolk is going to seem that because of the age of the egg is going to be my guess. So
Well, she had said that the whites were tinged yellow
yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's just
from
that's
being old,
yeah, just
being an old egg.
being an older egg, yeah. So we go to the yolk, and the yolk stays separate from the white or the albumin. I'm going to use these technical terms because I want you all to get them. And I don't care if you use them. I just want to, I want you to know them. And if you want to use them, if you want to, like Thanksgiving's coming up and you might help your mom or grandma or dad or whoever in the kitchen, and you might be like, oh, this is an interesting albumin that this egg has. You sound real smart, see, at Thanksgiving, and then see Christmas is coming up, and grandma will think, man, my grandson's really smart. I better get him something nice for Christmas. So see, I'm trying to look out for you guys. Um, yeah, I want you to keep your egg because I want to go over the rest of the parts of this. I'll try to speed up. So the vitelline membrane holds the yolk in place. And then on top of the yolk, and it's probably going to be on the very top, looking down, and it may be towards the side a little bit, uh, is going to be something called the germinal disc. And can you see it almost looks like a spyglass? It's red here. They're not red. I don't know why they made it red. It looks like a clear, like a white little clear circle. Can everybody see that? That's called the germinal disc. And that's where the magic happens on a fertile egg. That's where the little embryo is going to develop.
Now, what you were saying about the little clear thing,
Yeah.
let's say like when the eggs you find in the store, would they have them?
Yes, all eggs will have a germinal disc. The eggs you buy in the store are not fertile. The, and many of your eggs probably, if you don't have a rooster in with your hens actively, together, then you won't have a fertilized egg either. But all eggs will have a germinal disc. Now you can look at that germinal disc and tell typically if the egg is fertile or not. And does anybody know how to look at the little? Do you all first of all see the germinal disc? This is not. I'm trying to zoom.
Benjamin has his hand up. I'm not sure.
Oh, okay, Benjamin. Do you know what? Did you have a question, or did you want to try to answer the question here?
The chickens that start laying have two yolks.
Well, some chickens do have two yolks. Um, they're called double yolkers, and yeah, every once in a while, some chickens will lay uh, a double yolked egg. Now, I don't think a double yolked egg would make it to. I've not heard of two chicks ever coming. Have you, Prudence? I don't think they would make it to term.
I
They're
will
quite
try and
easy.
find the video. There is a lady who incubated a double yolk and it grew to full maturity.
Really?
And she had to hatch them out herself because they couldn't move in the egg to get themselves out, which is a terrible no-no.
Yeah.
And um, she got him out, but she used her pocket knife. And the whole time I'm watching the video, I'm just like, oh my goodness, stop it with the knife at the baby chicks. But I'll try and find that video and post it on our website.
Okay.
One of the kids at my school, we just had the birds. We usually just use birdie hens instead of incubating because it's too
Hmm.
much work. And so we didn't know it was a double egg because we didn't candle it, and it hatched two birds. We didn't help or anything.
Really?
Yeah,
Huh.
we didn't even.
That's cool.
Took us a while to figure out because there was five chicks and six eggs and
Huh.
shells. So yeah, it was a
That's
little
really interesting.
and also you can tell because the journal disc kind of looks more like a bullseye instead of like a circle-ish thing.
Yeah, that was what I was going to say. On a fertile egg, the germinal disc looks a little bit larger, and it almost looks like it's got more of a white ring to it. It almost looks like a bullseye. So if your germinal disc looks kind of like a bullseye and it's a little more pronounced, and the white around like this egg is not fertile. The germinal disc is very hard to see. But if your germinal disc is easy to see with like a nice white ring and it looks like a bullseye, that's probably a fertile egg. And if it's a little more clear and it doesn't look like that, uh, then it's not a fertile egg. And so one more thing I wanted to show on your eggs, then we can let you get rid of your eggs and wash your hands if you need to. I wanted to show you a diagram of the shell. So we know that the shell is mostly calcium, but there's some other stuff here too. So this is like a cutaway from the side of an eggshell. This is just a picture, like a drawing. It's not a real picture. And now here's some big words. I know we got some younger 4-Hers here, but you all are smart. And so I'm going to teach you a big word. This is going to help you in science class. This word is called well, it's kind of 3 words, or 2 words maybe. Semi-permeable membrane. The eggshell, isn't that a fancy word? Semi-permeable membrane. And what that means is eggshell is really interesting because it lets good things into the egg and it keeps bad things out of the egg. Because inside of an egg is pretty. Now, we certainly want to wash our hands after handling eggs and after breaking open eggs. But if you incubated those, inside those eggs are pretty, it's almost a pretty, I don't want to use the word sterile, but it's a pretty clean environment for an embryo to grow. And if bacteria did get in there, it would be very detrimental to the little chick that's growing inside. And so in that shell that looks so hard, there's little pores that lead inside the egg. There's a cuticle, which is like a material around, like a real sticky material around the outside of the egg. Then there's a mammillary layer, and then the shell membrane. And there's a protein matrix here too. And all this to say that between the cuticle and these pores, this very hard calcium layer, and then this mammillary layer, and then the shell membrane, and this is like a protein layer here. It allows the right amount of air in, it allows the right amount of moisture in, and it keeps bacteria. It's kind of an amazing thing. Even just the shell of an egg is amazing if you think about what it does. And it gives a perfect little home for that little chick to grow inside. And so it's kind of interesting. So who can remember what I called this, or lets good things in and keeps bad things out? What's that fancy word I said? Anybody remember? 2 words. One's kind of fancier than the other. Well, they're both semi-permeable membrane. That's right, semi-permeable membrane. Yeah. All right. So now, if you all don't have any more questions about your egg, you can dispose of it or give it to somebody to cook. Maybe you can have it for a snack, or if you want to give it to your cat or your dog, or if you want to just throw it away, that's fine. And
I
I'll
do
give
have
you
a
a minute
quick.
to go wash your. Oh yeah, you got a question? Go ahead.
It's we heard somewhere that we can feed like our chickens their eggs. Is that true? And if so, like when do you start doing that?
Feed your chickens their own eggs?
Yeah, like feed them the
I
eggs.
mean, you can. I would not suggest doing it raw because they're going to learn to crack their own. They're going to learn to eat their own. You're going to teach them to. But what you can do is scramble the eggs and feed it back to them, and then crumple up the shell and put it on top. That's perfectly fine. Chickens are omnivores. They'll eat almost anything.
And what
Literally, they will eat I mean, they'll eat
like
almost anything.
what age do you recommend to do
Oh, you
that?
could do it at any age, but it's like, I mean, if you're feeding them a good, you don't need to do that. You can just feed them if your layers are on a good laying ration. That feed should provide just about everything they need. But if you have a lot of extra eggs and you're just wanting to supplement or give them a treat, then sure, yeah, go for it. But here's what I don't want you to do: don't just crack an egg and throw it in the pen, because what you're going to teach is your chickens to just start. They'll start breaking their own eggs, and you'll never get any eggs. So the best way to do it is bring the eggs inside, scramble them, and if you want to feed the shells back to the hens, you can either crumble them up very tight, very small particle size, so they don't realize they're eating eggshells, or bake the eggshells in the oven, and you can make like a powder, almost crumble it up and just scatter it on top of either their feed or on top of the scrambled eggs. But the worst thing you can have is an egg eating chicken, because they can get to be they'll poke a hole in every egg in your coop. So that's why I would recommend cooking them for the chickens so they don't get in that habit.
So like cook it like you're making a regular
Yeah,
scrambled
the
egg.
scrambled eggs. Yeah, yeah.
And let so my chickens are those are the only chickens I have are like 4 weeks old. Can I use store-bought eggs to do that as well?
Oh, you could. It's just going to be much more expensive than just feeding them grower. If they're that, would you say 4 weeks? You'd be
About.
better off. Yeah, you'd be better just. I mean, if you wanted to give them a treat, that's one thing, but it's better to just give them a balanced start and grow feed, a chick start and grow, because it's going to have everything they need. Just let them eat all they want.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Why does chickens eat the dog poop?
Well, chickens are, like I say, they're omnivores, and they will peck just about anything. They'll eat their own poop sometimes. They'll eat other animals. I mean, they're not very discriminatory. They will eat garbage sometimes. They'll eat things that they shouldn't eat.
That's why other
Yeah,
ones
so
used to do it.
Ask them if it's bad for the eggs.
Is it bad? Is it bad for the eggs?
if that's all they're eating is dog poop, that's probably not the best. But if they just peck at it every once in a while, it probably won't hurt.
Say okay.
Okay.
Okay, good question. All right. Yeah. They're kind of silly little animals sometimes. If a chicken, I mean, I've seen where a chicken, I mean, I don't mean to be gross, but if a chicken passes away, the other chickens aren't going to mourn it. Sometimes they'll just stand around and start, I mean, they'll be wanting to eat it. They're just, they don't discriminate. They'll eat any, they just don't about to eat anything. So, uh, you got to be careful. Sometimes they can turn cannibalistic if they get a taste for chicken meat too much. They'll start to want to eat the little chickens that are lower down on the pecking order. So you got to be careful what habits you teach your chickens. This kind of sounds funny because their little brains aren't that big, but they can be conditioned to have some bad habits. So, um,
Are they related to vultures?
say that again.
Are they related to vultures?
Oh, the vultures. Well, they're both avian species. I mean, there's all different kinds of birds, so they're not really in the vulture same. That would be what genus? That's a different. I'm thinking. I'm looking. The genus is what I'm thinking of. So it's a different genus, but they are both birds, and they're both chickens will eat meat. They're chickens are omnivores, and vultures are carnivores. So they are a little bit different. Yeah. Do you know what omnivore? I said omnivore like I assume you all know what that means. Does everybody know what an omnivore is?
Meat and vegetable.
Eats meat and vegetables.
Yeah, they'll eat just about anything. They'll eat milk. They say, oh, well, only humans are the only animals that eat. I can promise you, if you put a pan of milk out around chickens, they'll have a field day. They absolutely love it. If they had fingers where they could milk a cow, they would because they love milk. They love cheese. They'll eat anything. Almost. May not necessarily. The milk actually is pretty good for them, but what is all this stuff in the chat? Is that a cartoon? I don't know what
And then
that
ask him if
Y'all
chickens
don't be
lay
putting
eggs
these
for 2 years.
cartoons in chat.
Does chickens lay eggs for 2 years?
A chicken will lay eggs typically for about anywhere from 200 to 300 days. Let's say 250 days. And so then after that, she's going to slow way down and molt, which means she's going to shed a lot of her feathers and get new feathers and take a little break, a little rest. And she's going to rebuild back some of her body condition and she's going to rebuild back, a lot of things. And then she'll go through a second lay cycle after that. And so that's, then she'll start over again. And they'll have about 3 or 4 really good lay cycles. And then their 4th or 5th slows way down. They may only lay 50 eggs in after that.
And then ask them why they lay just tiny eggs.
Why do they lay tiny eggs?
Well, a chicken, a pullet, when she first starts laying, will start laying real little eggs. And then they get bigger and bigger and bigger. And then sometimes as she's getting towards the end of her lay cycle, it'll get little again. Yep.
Okay.
You got a lot of good questions. Yeah. All right. Well, let's go on to the handling account. I think maybe you all started talking about this. So if you want to produce eggs for hatching, you've got to have a rooster in with your hens. They can't be next to the hens. They can't be on the same property. They have to be in the same coop or running with, however you keep your chickens. They got to be with the hens. And we recommend no more than 12 hens per rooster. And you want to keep your nest boxes. I mentioned that eggs, the shell, is a semi-permeable membrane, which tries to keep out bacteria. And bacteria often comes from chicken feces and other places. And unfortunately, well, maybe not unfortunately, just the way it is, the same vent that lays eggs is the same vent that also deposits chicken feces. And also, that's where everything comes out of, the same place. And so sometimes your eggs will be real clean, and then sometimes you might get eggs with chicken poop on them. And sometimes the chickens like to go just hang out in their nests and they'll poop in there too. So the reason I'm saying all that is not because I'm fascinated by chicken poop. It's because I want you to have nice clean eggs for you to incubate. And you can't really wash them as much Like if you're going to put eggs in the fridge, you want to rinse them off or wash them off. It's not that big of a deal. But if you're going to incubate them, then you don't necessarily want to do that because you're going to rub off that cuticle I talked about. And so you want to start out with clean eggs. So that means you need to have a clean nest box. So you want to keep your nest box very clean and get those eggs twice a day. If you're gathering eggs for your table, just to eat, once a day is fine. Heck, sometimes I'll skip a day. I've skipped a day on several occasions, and it's typically fine. But if you're going to incubate the eggs, the best practice is to check those eggs in the morning and get them, and then check them in the afternoon. That's going to do two things. That's going to make sure they're very fresh, and it's also going to make sure they stay clean. And do not wash the eggs. If you got an egg that's halfway covered with chicken manure, just don't try to incubate that egg. Just, okay, sorry, you can rinse it off and eat it. That's fine. But you don't want, now sometimes you can kind of wipe off a little bit of stuff if you're careful, but the idea of you're going to thoroughly wash the egg is not recommended. And the quicker you can get that egg from the nest into an incubator is the better. But you can store it a few days. But here's the hard part. The ideal temperature to store a fertile egg is between 40 and 65 degrees Fahrenheit. Well, a refrigerator is what, 34 degrees Fahrenheit? So that's not ideal. Our houses are like 72 or 75 degrees Fahrenheit. So that's not ideal. And it's hot in Florida outside. If you lived in Michigan or something, this time of year, you might set the eggs outside and it'd be perfectly fine for a few days. Well, it's still 80 something degrees here, so that's not ideal. So it's kind of, and Prudence probably, I know you must incubate a lot of eggs with your Bantams. So how do you handle that? Do you walk us through your
Um,
process, Miss Prudence? What do you do with your?
so I just keep them on the counter. I'm not real particular about them. We actually almost every month we have embryology going on in our schools in Santa Rosa County. And so when my farmers uh, start collecting the eggs, they just keep them in egg cartons out the side of the fridge on the counter unwashed for me. And then I go get them. I've actually gone to a farmer and picked eggs up and then had to um, stop on the way home for lunch. And because they were in like 100 miles away, these special eggs that we had going on. And I brought the eggs into the restaurant with me so they wouldn't sit out in the hot truck because I didn't want to risk it. But I know Joe had mentioned at a previous meeting that he has a very special fridge that is a warmer fridge, like, so it's at that 45 to 50 degrees in
Mhm.
his garage that he uses specifically for hatching eggs. But
Yeah.
all of our eggs that we hatch, uh we just put them on our counter, and I'll put them in the egg carton and I'll put them up on um like a, at the edge of a cookbook so they're not laying totally horizontal, I guess, in the egg carton. So they're a little bit, and if I have to keep them for a couple days, I'll just switch the side that is propped up on the egg on the cookbook to just keep them a little bit moving, I guess you could say.
Yeah. And so just keep in mind, if they get, we'll talk about the right temperatures. If you get them too warm, they're going to start the
Mhm.
incubation process, and then if you back them off from that, it's going to be bad. So you can keep them a couple of days in the house. You keep them a week in the house, but you got to have the right temperature, and room temperature is not ideal, but it's better than 80 outside or more, and it's better than say the 33 you would have in your refrigerator. But if you like Mr. Joe, who comes on a lot of times, she was saying he's got a refrigerator he's turned up so it's in the right range there, and that would be you could probably keep them a week or even maybe a little bit more in something like that. And the idea of turning them a little bit each day, even if you just turn them a little bit, that's a good idea too. All right, so no more than 12 hens per rooster. Keep those nest boxes clean and pick them up twice a day, and try to keep the eggs as clean as possible. All right, here's what I was talking about on the uh, the germinal disc here. This is an unfertilized egg, and I'm going to make this big. If you go, maybe you can see it better. Can you all see this? It's just kind of a round white thing, and it'll have like a clear looking. If you Here is the fertilized egg. It almost looks like a bullseye. Can you see the difference? Well, that's an embryo in the middle. That's why there's a little baby chick right there. It just looks like a little white dot, but that's going to be the chick. Um, I'm going to leave this up for a minute so you can see the difference between an unfertilized egg and a fertilized egg. Everybody see that? All right. I'll go on to the next slide. So I know we've got Tracy has different kinds of poultry. And some of you, somebody had a bunch of quail. I don't remember does anybody have quail? Somebody last year, and I don't know if they're on tonight or not, had like 30 quail.
I thought Tracy had quail, but his hand is up.
Oh, Tracy, you got a question or you just want to chat?
By the way,
Are you there, Tracy?
do you know that fertilized eggs are okay to eat?
Oh yeah, yeah. You can eat that's all I eat is fertilized eggs. That's what I have because I have roosters. Yeah, I'll go back to this egg is perfectly fine to eat. If the eggs you buy in a store, or maybe your eggs, if you don't have a rooster, are going to look like this. My eggs look like this, and I eat them. The egg has not started incubating yet, so that's as far as the development gets is right there. So it's fine to eat. Yep. All
One
right.
of the farms here, they have like a lot of quail.
Oh, okay. Quail are interesting little animals. I've got a few bomb white quail. I got like 12. All right, so here's the chart, and I want to take you through we'll start with chickens. This is the one most of us have. So chickens need to incubate for 21 days. Can you all see this chart? Is it big enough? And the temperature technically is 99.5 degrees Fahrenheit. That's what you want to incubate them at, about 99.5 degrees Fahrenheit. It says 100 here. Now, once you get past 101, you're going to start having crooked toes, and you get any higher than that, you're going to start killing the embryo. So that 99.5 is really the sweet spot. And with these new digital incubators, you can tune that in right in. I mean, that makes it nice that they're digital now. The humidity, you want to make sure in an incubator that you have a water source to provide a humid atmosphere for the egg because you don't want the little developing chick to stick to the shell. The egg's got to stay hydrated. And so the egg has to stay hydrated. And the way we do that is by keeping water in the incubator. So there's little channels typically at the bottom of an incubator where you can put water, and you've got to keep refilling the water. And you can get a wet bulb thermometer to measure humidity, and you want to keep that at 85 to 87% humidity for chickens. And you want to turn the eggs at least 3 times a day. Now, I like to use an automatic turner, but if you don't have an automatic turner, you want to put with a pencil an X on each egg. And in the morning, you say would turn all the X's up, and then at noon come turn all the X's down, and then in the evening turn all the X's back up. So that's how you make sure each egg gets turned. You start with all the X's up, you turn them all down. Then next time you turn them all back up. Does that make sense to everybody? So if you have an automatic turner, you just put the pointy end of the egg down inside the turner, and then make sure they're turning. You need to check them and make sure they're really working because sometimes they stop working. And a good way to check them is if you put an index card flat on top, it should fall down when it turns. And so that's a good way to come back later and see, well, my index card's fallen down. That's a good way to know that, the turner's actually turning. And then you want to stop turning the eggs on day 9 after, about day 18. After day 18, you can take them out of the automatic turner and just lay them down flat on the little wire on the bottom of the incubator and fill up every water fountain you see because you want that humidity boosted up to about 90% the last 3 days. And then open up the vents more on day 18. The little vents are the little air vents on top, is what I'm talking about. And Miss Prudence is putting a link in there so you can see, different an incubator.
This
Turkey.
is the incubators that we use. They are expensive, but I save up every year to be able to get one. So our program has 3 of them. So, but it is a plug and play incubator. You just got to put eggs in it, plug it in, and put the water in it, and it does it all by itself. It's awesome.
So chickens, how long do you incubate chicken eggs? Who could unmute and tell me?
21.
21 days. Turkeys, does anybody have turkeys? I think, do we have Amelia on? I know she's got turkeys. I didn't see her on. Amelia Zelzenach is in this club, and I don't know if she's on tonight or not. I know she's got turkeys, but does anybody else have any turkeys? They go for 28 days, 4 weeks. And you,
Ooh.
and you want them to be at 99 degrees.
Huh?
And then you stop turning at
I
25.
want a baby.
Ducks, 28 days, except for Muscovy ducks. They're a little bit longer, 35 to 37 days. And everything's going to be in this 99 to 100 range. Geese, 28 to 34 days, depending on what breed of goose you have. Guinea fowl, 28 days. Pheasants, depending on what kind of pheasant you have, 23 to 28 days. Peafowl, 28 to 30 days. Bobwhite quail, 23 to 24 days. Cortunix quail, 17 days. Chucker quail, also known as partridges. If you heard about a partridge in a pear tree, that's a chucker. They're 23 to 24 days. Grouse, 25 days. And pigeon, 17 days. So there is a little chart that might be helpful. And I'm going to let this just sit like this for you to look at for a minute. And I know most of you have chickens. So 21 days, 99.5 degrees Fahrenheit, 85 to 87% humidity, and stop turning at day 18. All right, everybody can see what they will need to see there. All right, let's talk about types of incubators. There are kind of, in my mind, a couple of different major types. I mean, there's all different kinds of brands, but there's one that has a little fan that blows the air around. That's called a forced air incubator. And then there's still air incubators with no fan. So the still air incubator, you might even bump them up to like 100, 101, 102. The ones with the forced air, it distributes that heat evenly. So 99.5 is ideal for them. Most of the incubators you might buy now, I think, would have a little fan inside, but you might still find one that without the fan. So, and then some incubators have an automatic. I already told you all this. You put X on one side, and that helps you make sure all the eggs get turned. So, to operate an incubator, to set up an incubator, you want to read the instructions or the owner's manual, and you want to plug it in at least a day before you set the eggs. I know how you all are. I'm the same way. You're excited as you want to plug it in and go ahead and throw some eggs in and get them cooking, so to speak. Well, that's not really a good idea because that thing needs to regulate and get the temperature holding because very wide fluctuations are not good for the little developing embryos. So you want to make sure you get your humidity and your temperature right and it's holding. And then a day later, put your eggs in. And there's little channels there to put water in. Make sure you don't let them run dry because that's, even though it's humid in Florida, you want to keep it very, very humid inside that incubator. And if it starts fogging up, you can remove one of the vents and it should clear up. And you can have a good thermometer inside the incubator to make sure it's staying where it needs to stay. And while incubating the eggs, you want to check the temperature at least once a day. Now, if you're like me, you might check it several times a day. And you don't want it to get too hot or too cold. It's like Goldilocks and the Three Bears. She liked everything just right. Well, these little eggs with the little embryos inside, they want everything just right. They want the temperature just right. They want the humidity just right. They want to be turned just right. And if you do all that, then they'll hatch if they're fertile. You can candle the eggs if you've got a candler to see if the embryos are developing. But if you do that, make sure you handle them very gently and put them back in rather quickly. You don't want them to cool off outside the incubator. And check your water channels every day or two. Don't let them dry out. And I've already showed you this. I don't know why that's in there twice. And so if you're hatching a bunch of chicken eggs on day 18, you're going to just quit turning them. Or if they're in an automatic turner, take them outside and lay them flat on their side. And they need a little bit more humidity right before hatching so they don't stick to the shell. And a lot of the incubators will tell you to open the vents at that time. And you might, on day 19 or 20, start hearing what we call pipping. And that's where the little chick with their egg tooth will start pecking the side of the shell. And you can actually hear that sometimes. And sometimes if they hear that, that causes a response for all the chicks sometimes to start. So, especially in like bobwhite quail, any kind of wild bird species. Have you ever wondered how I did my master's project on this? For bobwhite quail, a female quail, a hen, she will lay an egg each day, but then they all hatch at the same time. Well, why is that? Because in the wild, they need to hatch at the same time because they need to leave the nest at the same time so they don't get predated by predators, consumed by predators. So the little chicks can hear when the first one starts pipping, that sets them all off to start pipping. Now that's only in some wild species. Chickens, you don't see that same strong pipping response, but in wild birds, they typically notice they all hatch at the same time. And then on day 21, you'll have chicks. Any questions on that? We've covered a lot. We got a little bit more to cover, but do we have any questions so far? Let's see, there's something in chat. Oh, they're just chatting, I think. All right, so when your chicks hatch, I know the first thing you're going to want to do is play with them, but they're very delicate. So allow them to dry off in the incubator. If you pick them up and start playing with them when they're still wet, they're going to get very cold and they're probably going to get sick. So just let them chill out in the incubator, not chill out. You stay nice and cozy and warm in the incubator and get completely dry. Then you can think about maybe wanting to handle them and pick them up and hold them. But please don't pick up the wet chicks because they're going to get too cold. And once they're dry, you can pick them up a little bit. But when they're dry, you can then safely move them to a brooder. And a brooder is what we call a box or a cage or something where you have got a heat source and feed and water and draft protection that the little chick feels comfortable. And little chicks like to be kept warm. They like to be kept 95 degrees Fahrenheit, in fact, for the first week of their life. And every week they get older, they can tolerate 5 degrees cooler. So the first week, their ideal temperature is 95 degrees. Week 2, their ideal temperature is 90 degrees. Week 3, their ideal temperature is 85 degrees. And it might be 95 degrees during the day where you live, and you think, oh, well, these chicks are safe outside. But it might get down to 79 degrees at night, and they'll all be dead the next morning because they're too cold. They can't handle 79 degrees. They just literally cannot handle it. Now, in the wild, those little chicks would be out, chicking around, doing whatever little chicks do, following their mother. But at night, they're going to snuggle up under mama hen, and she's going to keep them 95 degrees at night when it's 79 degrees out. So if you don't have a mother hen, you better have a heat lamp or some sort of heat source to keep those little chicks warm. And you can tell if chicks are happy in a brooder. If they're all kind of evenly distributed and eating and drinking and walking around, just like kind of looking like normal little chicks that are evenly spread out, you got a good temperature. If they're all huddled up, if you got a heat lamp, or even if you don't have a heat lamp, if you've got a heat lamp, they're all huddled up under the heat lamp, they're too cold. If you don't have a heat lamp and they're all huddled up in a corner or somewhere, all on top of each other, they're too cold. If you've got a heat lamp and they're all as far away from the heat lamp as they can around the edge of the brooder to get away from it, then they're too hot. Again, they want to be just right. So what you want to see is them happily walking around, kind of playing, eating, drinking, but evenly distributed and moving around the whole brooder. Then they're happy. Then that's a good sign they're happy. All right,
Dr.
these,
Chris,
yeah,
I wanted to share something that I show
okay,
our classes when we do embryology. And I'm going to try and do this. I have two screens, but okay, yes, it's going to let me do it. Hopefully you can see this. I'll run through it very fast. Do y'all see the egg and it says day one? Is that
yeah,
what
Yeah.
you're seeing?
yeah.
Okay, good deal. All right, so you can see the germinal disc here as we go through, and these are computer generated photos that I have obtained. I didn't make them, but this is a design, and I actually emailed this to you, Dr. Chris, that I give our teachers because it prints front to back, and then they can see what's going on each day. And so day two, you can, now this is not able to be seen with the naked eye, like it says, but the little center here, that's where our baby chick is going to be developing from. And these are called spider veins, which is what we're going to look for when we candle at day 7. And so the baby chick is getting a little bit bigger on day 3. And today is an exciting day because their heart starts to beat on day 3. And then on day 4, you can see, so this little sac here where the veins are growing, that's going to go all the way around the yolk because that is the food that the baby chick uses to grow while it's in the egg, because the mama hen can't crack the egg open, feed the baby chick, and then put the egg back together every day to feed the baby chick. So the baby chick has to get all of its food from the yolk. And so that amniotic fluid will go all, that's where the baby chick lives, in that little sac is going to start to spread out. And you can see how these spider veins are getting thicker and thicker, and you can see this little net, so to speak, is getting further around the egg. It's kind of like a blob that's growing, and going to engulf the yolk for us. On day 5, the baby chick takes a C shape. So there's a head, and the spine is developing. Toes begin to grow, and wings and legs start to grow all on this day. And you can see the toes are very much more developed. And this black dot here on the baby chick is the baby chick's eyeball. So the baby chick gets an eyeball long before it gets an eyelid. And so that when you candle the eggs, you can see that very easy because it's really, really dark. And that's what I always look for when I'm candling the eggs, and which I do usually if I can wait. I'm like y'all, I get excited. But I usually wait on the first week. And the baby chick this day on day 7 is getting its neck, and the beak is formed, and the brain begins to fill the whole entire head of um, the chicken. And these spider veins, as you can well imagine, if you candle the egg, you can really see those very easy when you look through the egg. Day 8, whatever the color of the baby chick's eye is going to be, that's developed on day 8. And then the beak splits into 2 parts, and it has visible legs and wings, and the neck stretches out away from the head. So it's got a little neck now, and it can start to hear you on day 8. So this is usually when I start. Of course, I usually do it even before they get their ear. But that's when I start to call to my baby chicks in the incubator, because when they hatch, they're going to know my voice. Jaden, you had a question?
Yeah, so chickens do have different colored eyes because ours is just
Yes.
all black.
Yeah, yes. Different breeds have different colored eyes. Some of them are black, some of them are brown, some of them I have a breed that has yellow eyeballs. So yeah, they have different color eyes. So on this day, on day 9, the feathers will start to grow and the baby chick gets toes. And in this picture, you can see the egg tooth pretty good, which is what the baby chick uses to get out of the shell. And nostrils are present on day 10. And on day 10, the eyelids start to grow. So the baby chick has had its eyeballs. Now it starts to get its eyelid. And the egg tooth is fully formed now. And on day 11, um, the baby chick at this point now looks like a baby chick. Before it kind of looked like a weird alien blob thing. But now it actually looks like a baby chick. On day 12, the eyelid has a top eyelid, and the lower eyelid is almost covering the entire eye. And the feathers that cover the ear will start to grow today. And claws and their scales on their legs and feet will start to develop today on day 13. Now, we usually go back to the school on day 14 and candle again, but it's a lot harder to see anything on day 14 because you can see the baby chicks filling up almost that whole egg. And so the last week of development, the baby chick starts to get into position. And I always tell our youth that everything that is in this egg has to be packed up and moved out when the baby chick moves out. So all of that yolk, the albumin, the blood, all of that is going to be absorbed by the baby chick in preparation for moving day, which is coming up on day 16. The baby chick, you can notice the blood, the spider veins that we saw before are starting to get fainter because they're being drawn into the baby chick's body. And the embryo continues to grow and starts to get in to position. So you can see this little baby chick has its head going under its wing here. And then this is where the air cell is. And that's what the baby chick's headed for, is to put its little beak in that air cell. And that's what Dr. Chris was talking about when he said you'll hear pipping. Even though some of the shells aren't even broken, you'll hear them pipping because that's where they'll get that air out of the air cell and just start peeping away. And then now the albumin is fully absorbed on day 17. And then this is what Dr. Chris was talking about. We call it lockdown day, where we lock down our incubator and don't open it, and prep for hatch day because we want that humidity to be up. And the baby chick takes final position and starts to hatch. Now, this could take 10 minutes for some baby chicks. It could take 10 hours for some baby chick. It just really depends on the baby chick. If you asked 100 women how long they were in labor when they were having their babies, it would vary all over the place. So, same thing with the chick. And then day 20 is when the chicks will start to pip, and you'll be able to hear that. We always do that in the classroom. And then I always show this last picture because I want the youth to see they don't come out, number one, they don't come out yellow, and they don't come out fluffy. So I always show this picture because it really shows, number one, the how much crammed in there, how crammed they are into the egg. And I always want to prep the youth in the classroom that they're not going to come out fluffy. And most of the chickens that we hatch aren't going to be yellow anyhow, because if they come from my farm, they're going to be black. I have French Marins that are black, and then my one of my farmers that I hatch her eggs right now are Bielefelders, and they are a black and brown baby chick. So I will stop sharing. I just wanted to be able to show y'all that while we were here on this subject, because it's a really cool visual for
Thanks for
you who
sharing.
don't get to see it.
That was really cool. Thanks for sharing that.
I do have a quick question that's semi-related to it. We have chickens, and we do not know really what breed there is. supposedly they're supposed to be like one of the really nicer breeds. We tried searching up. We believe we found them, but we don't know 100%. Is there any way we can tell, like, oh, that's an easy distinction?
Uh,
Guessing.
What color are they?
here,
Right now they're like yellowish with a hint of like brownish. Like maybe has some brown feathers. They're not completely yellow, but they're like between yellow and brownish.
And how old are they, Jaden?
Oh gosh, we got them in October. I would say 4 weeks, maybe younger, maybe older. I don't know exact.
well, you can, when they get older, if you go on the American Poultry Association website and look up standard of perfection, somewhere on there is a chart. It's got the different breeds. I don't know if you can get the full thing, but they do have a chart that can help you kind of narrow it down, like by body shape and then color would give you maybe the breed and variety. Or you can go on like Murray McMurray or one of these where you order chicks and look at the pictures and see if you see any that look like yours. That's about the best way you can do it.
Owen has their hand up.
Do you recommend giving chicks any antibiotics once they are born?
So what I do is I use a medicated feed, and people that scares a lot of people because they don't really understand what it means. What a medicated feed has in it is something called a coccidiostat. And that is simply something, a substance that just deters coccidiosis. And coccidiosis is a little single celled organism. It's probably the number one little bug that will attack little baby chicks. Coccidiosis can kill chicks in a hurry. It can even affect mature hens, but they're once they get to a certain age, theoretically, they've got their own defenses, their own natural bodily defenses that will fight off coccidiosis. But little chicks don't have that yet. They don't have that immunity built up. So all a coccidiostat does is give them that in their feed. And you don't have to, you go first couple weeks after that, they should have their own immunity built up. So that's how I handle it. Now, you really, besides that, shouldn't have to do much to really protect your home chicks, home raised chicks. Now, if you're going to ship chicks across the country, there's some other things. You can buy chicks that have had different uh, inoculations, like for Marek's disease or for some of these other things. And that might be worth spending a little money on if you're concerned about chicks getting that. But if you're just hatching your own chicks, I would recommend. Now, you don't have to. If you think you can keep everything nice and clean, then you don't necessarily need to feed a medicated chick start and grow. But I do just because it's not going to hurt the chick, and um, it's just an extra tool in your toolbox to keep those chicks healthy. Prudence, do you use medicated feed on your chicks?
I do not traditionally use medicated feed. I have in the past. It just kind of depends on who I'm hatching. But to answer the question about antibiotics specifically, you have to have a veterinarian in the state of Florida prescribe antibiotics to your chicken. So if you find a poultry vet, you let us know because they're
They're hard to
not easy to
find.
find. So um, you can't just like when we were coming up, you could just go to the feed store and
Yeah.
buy antibiotics, powdered antibiotics to put in the water, and that's just not the case. It's very difficult nowadays to even get antibiotics. So if you have antibiotics and you want to give them, there would be specific needs, but getting the antibiotics would be the hardest part, I think, Owen. And then Tracy
Thank
has
you.
a hand up, and Bailey and Bryce and
Yeah,
Jaden.
y'all just go ahead and ask your questions. That's fine.
Chris, you kind of took the words right out of my mouth about coccidiosis.
Oh, okay.
So we do have medicated feed. It's like a start and grow
Yeah.
medicated feed. The reason why they suggested to give it us because they all of our six of our chickens had those shots as is right now. They had the shots before we got in because we're doing the pullet contest through the swine welfare. So they gave us the
Okay.
chickens, and that's okay if I have that medicated feed.
Yeah, that's fine.
I just wanted to be sure.
And
Let's
then
see.
Bailey and Bryce Oliver had put a question in the chat. What if the chick never makes it out of the shell? How can you tell if the chick is not coming out of there?
Well, that's a tough one because sometimes I've heard various levels of success of helping them. Really, in theory, they need to break out themselves to build up their muscles to be able to stand up and can then continue on with their life. But I have heard of, and I've actually been had to do this before where we've had chicks that were having difficulty and they needed just a tiny little extra crack, maybe to help push them over the edge, and then they did fine. But you want to help them as little as always err on the side of helping them as little as possible. And sometimes they're just not going to make it. I mean, it's sad, but that's just the way it is. There's just, every once in a while, just one that's not going to make it, and it's going to be weak, and it's not going to have enough strength to get out. So use a little bit of common sense. Don't overhelp them because you can do much more harm. Even ripping the shell off can damage their skin if you don't do it right. So, and that goes back to your if you keep the right amount of humidity in there, it's going to do you a lot better on hatching day. You won't have near the problem. That's when you run into a lot of problems if you've got an incubator that's too dry, in my opinion.
Well, and remember how they're packing up the yolk and the albumin and the blood and all of that. If you think, well, the baby chick is pipped, I need to crack it out of here like I'm gonna make an omelet. That baby chick may not have the yolk fully absorbed because they got a lot going on. If you've ever moved, you know you don't pack up every single room and then go to the next room. You pack a little bit here, you a little bit there, a little bit there, and that's how the baby chicks are doing. Is they're absorbing that yolk, they're absorbing that blood, they're pecking out. They got a lot going on, and you don't want to jump in there and help too soon. And like Dr. Chris said, they need that workout, so to speak, so that they can have strong muscles when they are hatched. So I always say never, 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 never help a baby chick hatch. But on the flip side of the coin, I've been raising chickens for 43 years, and yeah, I've helped baby chicks out of the egg when when they just need a little. I've done it, a handful of times, but I do try to not help them as much. I try to leave it to them as much as I possibly can.
Yeah. Well, how was this meeting? Did you guys learn anything? Did,
Yes.
did you enjoy this?
Yep.
Good.
And Dr. Chris, I put a video. I will upload this one and post it to our website, but I also added a new page called Embryology, and I put a YouTube video that I found on our website of a lady who had an egg that started hatching and then it never did hatch. And so she wanted to see what went wrong. And she opened the egg up, and there were two baby chicks in there, and they were not
Oh,
goners. She actually helped them out of there. So that answers your question about if you can
oh,
incubate a double yolker. And the funny thing is they are fraternal twins. Because one was a yellow baby chick and one was a darker
huh.
baby chick. So
That's interesting. Oh,
that's
that's
on our
interesting.
face on our website.
Okay. All right. So next time I'm going to play this game with you. This is Embryology Jeopardy that I made, and we'll play. I'm going to see what you all learn. So we'll play this next because it's getting late now. But next time we'll review this by playing this game. We'll start out with this game next time. Does that sound good to everybody? I'll give you a preview. We'll do one question. Let's see. We'll do inside the incubator for 100. I'll see if you all are paying attention. The ideal temperature to incubate chicken eggs in a forced air incubator, in other words, an incubator with a fan, is what temperature? Who can tell me?
99.5.
Let's see if you're right. Look at there. You did great. All right. So y'all want to play this next time?
Yep.
All right. We'll play this next
Yes,
time.
please.
I'll stop sharing because it's getting late. But thank you all for coming on. I'm glad you enjoyed the meeting. And Miss Prudence, somebody wanted to have the link to
When
the
is the
website.
next meeting?
The next meeting
When
will
is
be the second Tuesday in December. So let me look and see when that is.
Let's see, because we might be at Disney.
That should be December the 10th, right? Now, the last 2 years, we've done a
Wait,
poultry
it's gonna be
Christmas.
at the same.
Are y'all listening? The next meetings are December meeting. In the last 2 years, we've done a Christmas costume contest. So, in other words, kids have made little costumes for their chickens or their turkeys or whatever. We've had kids dress their chickens up like Santa Claus or like a reindeer. Now, I don't want you gluing anything to your birds. I don't want you hurting your birds. But if you can make them a little, do you want to do this again? First of all, do you want to do it again? And then, second of all,
Yes.
okay. So next meeting we'll do the Jeopardy, and I'm gonna judge. I'll try to get a celebrity. Maybe Miss Prudence will help me judge, but I may get one more judge to judge your chickens. So if
Now, can the chickens be like younger than
they can
probably
be
12?
younger, but they can't be anything that would hurt the chicken. So as long
Okay.
as it doesn't hurt the chicken, they're fine.
So let's say I have like 5 guinea pigs and they have
Are
some costumes as is. I can use those costumes on the chickens.
If you've got a costume that'll fit a chicken that won't hurt the chicken, you can use it. If it's your costume, your grandma's costume, I don't care. As long as it doesn't hurt, you don't have to do Christmas stuff. You can do if it's you can have a uh if there's another holiday you celebrate like Passover or not
Are you going to be at the Oklahoma Fair?
Hanukkah.
Hanukkah, you can have a Hanukkah costume, whatever.
Are
No,
you going to be at the Oklahoma Fair?
no, I'm not going to be there. Nope.
Did you did you make the song about the club yet?
Yeah, maybe we'll make it and we'll sing it for next time. You gonna help me make one? Give me some ideas you want to email me some ideas you want to cover in the song, and
Okay.
I'll write it for next time.
Okay.
So email me, okay?
I practiced the ukulele, so
Olivia, I like that anime picture that you put on there.
If you want to have just a winter costume, like skis or whatever, or fall, any kind of excuse me, any kind of costume's fine. It doesn't have to be Christmas.
Hey,
All right. Well, I will see you all on the 10th then, and I hope you all have a wonderful evening and a great month. And have a happy
Sounds
Thanksgiving.
good. Happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
you too.